Today we're making macaroni cheese. The main focus of today's lesson will be looking at how we make a white sauce. So the basis of a lasagna white sauce that we then would turn into a cheese sauce by adding cheese, or you could use other ingredients to change that. We are looking at something called gelatinisation. So we're looking at the reaction of the starch when we're applying heat, and we are starting by making a roux. So the ingredients for a basic white sauce, forgetting the cheese for now, is equal amounts of plain flour and butter, and then we're looking at 10 times as much milk. So in this instance I'm using 20 grams of flour and butter and 200 millilitres of milk, and that will make a thick coating sauce that we could use on pasta, or you could also use as a topping on a lasagna as well. What I'm going to do first of all is get the pasta in the pan. So you can see I've got a pan on at the back. The water has been boiling now for a couple of minutes, so I'm just going to add in the pasta, and I'm doing 150 grams of pasta today to go with the sauce that we will then all mix together at the end. So very gently pouring the pasta in. Obviously the boiling part of that will just stop for a minute. I've just added something quite cold in there. That will come back up to the boil in a second. So I was boiling on 6, and as a rule always turning down to 2 for a simmer, just so that the water doesn't evaporate, dry up, and the risk of the pasta sticking to the bottom of the pan. We want it to just have that very, very slight simmer rather than it boiling away vigorously and evaporating all of that water. So the pasta is now on at the back, pan handle tucked away, and we can concentrate on making the basic bechamel sauce. So we're going to start off with the butter. We're going to melt the butter, so I'm putting it on number 4. I've got a frying pan on the front. You don't have to use a frying pan, you can use a deeper pan. Frying pan, you can just see a lot more of what's going on. You're making sure that it's not sticking. There's a bigger surface area on the bottom of the pan, so it's less likely to stick as you are stirring all the way around rather than a small deep pan. So the butter is going to go into the pan first of all, and we want that to melt. When that's melted, we are going to stir in the flour. Now, one thing to learn about this today regards science is what I mentioned a minute ago, which is a process of gelatinisation. Inside flour are starch molecules, and those starch molecules swell and start to take on water or liquid as it is heated. As they swell, they take on more and more liquid, and they eventually burst. And as they burst, they're like a network that will all join up together, and that's what turns a liquid like milk into a thick sauce. It's the process of gelatinisation. It doesn't start to happen until it gets to about 60 degrees, so you have to be patient. A lot of people think it's not happening, I'm stirring, it's not going thicker. You've got to be patient, slow and steady rather than turning up the heat, because then you're likely to burn the flour at the bottom and it will turn into a paste rather than distributing around the sauce. So the flour in here has got starch in it, and that starch will start to swell and take on liquid when we get to about 60 degrees. By 80 degrees, all of the starch molecules are taking on liquid and starting to burst. And what they say is the full gelatinisation process has completed when we get to boiling point, when we get to 100 degrees. And that's when you're guaranteed that you know that your sauce has thickened completely. It can't go any thicker unless it starts to cool. You always notice the sauce will go thicker as it cools. The gelatinisation, that jelly kind of sound in the word, is where it turns to a gel. So as the butter starts to melt, I'm now going to stir in the flour. We aren't going to keep it on the heat for the whole time. I will show you the steps as we go along. So first of all, the flour is going to go in, and we're going to make a paste. Now this paste is what we call a roux, and the roux is the flour and the melted butter combined to make that yellow paste, which I will show you once it is all done. So we're just going to use a whisk. We're using a whisk to start with, and to start bringing and incorporating the liquid in, which we will do in a minute. And then once it's a little bit thicker, you can start using a spoon. So we now have what we call a roux. So a roux is a thick paste, and that's the basis. So at this point, we're just going to take it off the heat for a moment while we add our liquid. Now that liquid, in today's case, is milk, and we're going to then add in the cheese, and that's what's going to make the cheese sauce for our macaroni cheese. We could have kept just milk in there, but added some garlic in with the butter and fried that at the beginning, and then just added in the milk, and that would make a really creamy, garlicky type sauce that you could put again on pasta, or it adds an extra element of flavour if you want a really flavoursome lasagna that you can pop it in. So we're going to be adding the milk. You can also use this roux as a basis for a gravy, so you could then add beef stock, chicken stock into there. You could add that into the roasting pan when you've roasted chicken, and you can put the roux in at the beginning, so there will also be fat in there already. You might not need to put the butter in if you've already got fat floating around the bottom. Just add the flour before you add the liquid, thicken it up, then add your stock, and you can start to turn into a gravy. You can also add wine, so you can cook off the alcohol obviously, but you can add a red wine, you can add a white wine, you can make a sauce that way again. It's just the roux. His main job is to thicken any sorts of liquids to make them that sauce consistency. So now that I've got my roux and it's nice and thick, I am going to add small amounts of the milk into here. Not loads. All I want to do at this point is start to loosen that roux. I don't want it to start thickening already, because it will go really, really thick, and then you could end up with lots of lumps in the sauce. So we want to, whilst it's off the heat, really start to loosen the sauce, combine the milk in with that roux and start to loosen it. So you can see now that I've got quite a loose sauce, which you'll think, well, that's quite watery. But this way of doing it this way is so that we don't get lumps. So I'm going to add that now back onto the heat, and with one hand I am going to be whisking, and with one hand I'm going to pour. Like I said, this is slow and steady. Got to be patient. We don't want this to suddenly thicken and not feel in control. But one thing you cannot do is stop whisking. We have got to be stirring all the time, going right the way around the outside, bringing it into the centre. You can do the figure of 8 if you want to make sure that you are really, really combining this together. And we are gradually adding that milk in constantly to avoid getting a lumpy sauce. So it is starting to thicken now, so I know it's reaching 60 degrees, and it's starting to take on that liquid and starting to swell and explode. And as that explodes, obviously that will thicken the sauce for me. Keep going with this, stirring all the time, making sure we're going all the way around the outside as well, so that we don't end up with a little bit that's starting to really thicken on its own without being distributed. That's what causes the lumps. So lots and lots of stirring all the time. To be ambidextrous doing this with my left hand while pouring with my right. You keep going. Mine at the moment looks quite watery. Again, I've got to be patient. The ratios are right. There is a science to this. We need to have these ratios. So we've got about 20 grams to 200 millilitres. Just got a drop more milk left to go in. And then I stand here until it starts to thicken. I'm going to swap to my right hand, stirring all the way around, and keep stirring until it thickens. So when this is thick, I will show you what the end result of the sauce is like, and then we can add in the cheese. I'm just bringing the video in on a close-up now of the pan so that you can hopefully, there's too much steam coming off, see now how thick this sauce has gone. So this is what we call a coating consistency sauce. So this will coat pasta, quite easy to pour but thick, so it will coat a layer of lasagna sheets. And you can hopefully see now it's got what we call like a custard consistency. So when I tend to be cooking in school, this is the consistency I would describe. It's a bit like custard, warm custard obviously. Thick custard goes thicker. That is the gelatinisation process as well. It starts to gel, which is why it goes thicker as it cools. But you can see here now, I've got this lovely coating consistency sauce. So just to show you regards the coating consistency, if I pop a spoon in it now, the coating consistency that I was taught when I was at university, and you've got to be very careful doing this because it is hot, but you should be able to coat the back of the spoon, and you should be able to wipe it
and it won't fall. It will leave that line, that indentation where I've taken it. So the rest of the spoon is still coated, and that centre part obviously has been removed, but it's still coating the rest of my spoon. If it was pouring consistency, there wouldn't be such a definitive line. If you want pouring consistency, you reduce the amount of flour and butter, but you keep the milk or the other liquid at the same measurement. Obviously, please be careful doing something like that because that sauce is hot. So I've just done that, but you must be very careful that you don't burn yourself. That was just for me to demonstrate what coating consistency is. So now I'm going to be adding in the cheese. So I've taken it off the heat. Don't need the heat anymore because the heat of the sauce will melt this cheese for me. Now I've got a mixture in here of double Gloucester and I've got some cheddar, extra mature cheddar as well. What I'm going to do is put the majority of it in. It's about 75 grams. Then I'm going to reserve a little bit to pop on the top, and then I'll put that in the oven to melt once I've combined it with the pasta. So we're going to stir this in and we're going to season the sauce. Now, I don't want to add too much salt into this because the cheese is a very salty product. So just a pinch of salt and then a good pinch of black pepper. What you can do is add in some mustard powder or a teaspoon of mustard, half a teaspoon of mustard, depending on how much you like it. That can add a little bit of a kick to the sauce as well, really bring out the flavour. You could add in some cayenne pepper, you could add paprika into there as well, just to really bring out and enhance those flavours. So as you can see now, the sauce is really starting to melt all of that cheese in. You'll notice the texture of the sauce will change as well. So instead of being that thick custardy consistency, you now have quite a stringy type sauce because of the structure of the cheese that's now melted into there. So once the pasta is cooked, as you can see just in the side here, it's nearly done. I'll show you how to drain that safely, just as a reminder. Combine it all together and then we'll pop it under the grill, or you could use it in the oven to gratinate the top with the cheese and give it a really nice brown crispy coating. I'm also going to add in an extra ingredient as well.
Now that the pasta is cooked, I'm going to drain the pasta and then we're going to combine all of the ingredients together to show you how to finish off the macaroni cheese. So with the pasta, obviously remove anything from it, and we are using a colander. What I always tend to do is get facial steam. I tend to do is advise people to leave this in the sink. Although they're designed with a handle, it's good for carrying. You don't want to be holding the colander and pouring boiling water through it, just in case you splash your hands. So pop that into the sink before you're draining. Using the pan now, just obviously in case there's any more drips. Now, what's really good to do, people often over drain their pasta. Some of that cooking liquor, the water that's in the pasta, is really good for loosening up sauces. People have a tendency to want a really, really thick pasta sauce. Actually, the water in it, the consistency, is just to give it a little bit of a better appearance, not so claggy and thick. So what I'm going to do now, I'm actually going to put the sauce into the deeper pan because I'm conscious that my pasta will overflow. So I'm going to just pop it back in. I've got a very small amount of cooking liquor now in the bottom of there. Add that all in, and then I'm going to scrape my sauce over the top and really coat all that pasta and combine it with the small amount of cooking liquor that's in the bottom. And then what I'm doing is I'm adding some protein into my dish. So all I've done is I have chopped up some, which did I do? Honey roast ham into here, just chopped it up ready, and then I'm just going to pour that in as well to really combine that round. Now you can add frozen vegetables at that stage. You could have put some broccoli in with your pasta, and then you can pour both of those in together to combine them. You can add plenty of different things. You could fry some mushrooms separately, or you could have fried them in the butter at the very beginning. So any vegetable that needs a little bit of frying, you can pop it in with the butter at the beginning and still stir the flour in. So you're making the roux, but the vegetables are just combined inside of there, and then obviously just add in the liquid afterwards. Just ensures that those vegetables have caramelised slightly, can they add a little bit more sweetness. So peppers could have gone in at that stage at the beginning, mushrooms, courgettes, onions can go in as well. So now I have combined my pasta Got a lovely coating sauce there. I've added in ham as well, and I'm just going to put it into an oven-proof dish. Putting it all together, scraping it all out. One of my children's favourite cheese, this. And once you understand that process of making a bechamel sauce, the plain white sauce, whether you put the cheese in it or not, once you understand that process and you get used to and confident with making that sauce and going slow and steady rather than whacking the heat up thinking it's not thickening and then panicking and burning it, once you get used to that process, this is such an easy dinner to make, really, really quick, and also you can freeze the leftovers, which is always very, very useful. So, cheese now over the top, sprinkling that on, and then what I'm going to do is put mine under the grill that now for 3 or 4 minutes till I see all of the cheese starting to bubble, slightly brown, and then that will be my macaroni cheese completely done. Always remembering oven gloves when we're popping them into the grill, and then we pop it in and we'll check on it again in a few minutes. The macaroni cheese has now been under the grill for about 5 minutes, so the cheese has started to gratinate on the top and you can start to see some browning. As you can see here, lots of lovely colour on the top, and that is the macaroni cheese complete.